The folding chair under me let out a slow, ugly squeak like it didn't approve of what was about to happen. Church fellowship halls have a smell all their own. Burnt coffee, lemon cleaner, the sour hint of damp wool coats, and beneath it all, something older. Something rooted in tired drywall and half-meant promises. The windows were fogged near the edges, and the floor gave a little under each step like the building itself had grown weary of hosting other people's reckonings. The wall clock above the whiteboard ticked loud enough to count regrets. Its second hand stuttered, just barely, with each movement, imperfect and persistent, like the people sitting beneath it. Someone's breath caught. Someone else fidgeted, their wedding ring tapping against a styrofoam cup in an unthinking rhythm. The sound cut through the room like a bone against porcelain. Evan Caldwell stood near the coffee urn, shoulders squared like he'd practiced them that way. Face pale, tight in the flat punch of fluorescent light that made everyone look half dead and overexposed. He wasn't holding anything. No notes, no cup, not even his own hands. But he kept glancing from my thin manila folder to Kendra, my stepdaughter, then to Mara, my wife. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter and dry. And then, in a voice that wasn't angry, just tired, just wounded, just too steady, he looked straight at me and said, "That's not what I was told. And it hurts more than you know." That was when the room froze. Not the kind of silence you get when people are being polite. No one shuffled. No one coughed to fill it. This was the kind of silence that happens when the truth walks in, uninvited, sits down, and waits for someone to look it in the eye. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. All I could think was, I raised her. I was there. And they're trying to erase me like a smudge on a window. 2 days earlier, I was still standing in my own kitchen off Alpine Road in Rockford, Illinois. The oven hummed, and the air carried the warmth of pumpkin pie, nutmeg, cinnamon, and the thin, crisp smell of early winter on the air from the door I just closed behind me. The Monday before Thanksgiving. The kind of day that smells like comfort even when something inside you knows better. Rockford wore its late November face. Sky low and gray, wind sharp off the Rock River, biting through jackets like it had a personal grudge. Slush collected in parking lots, that kind of dirty brown that makes you wipe your boots twice before stepping inside anywhere decent. I'd just come off a job rewiring an old storefront near East State Street. The place still stank faintly of mildew and whatever perfume the previous tenant used to mask bad days. I'm a union electrician. IBEW Local 364. I work with my hands. My days are measured in circuits and conduit, voltage drops and breaker loads. Wires don't lie to you. They don't play favorites. They don't gaslight you with smiles or rewrite the story halfway through. They follow rules. Cross the wrong wire, something trips. Sometimes something burns. But at least you know why. Family doesn't give you that. I walked in through the garage door like I always did, boots knocking the threshold, gloves shoved into my coat pocket, hands still smelling faintly of copper and PVC dust. The house was warm, quiet. Mara had the kitchen lights on, oven working, her apron tied like she'd been at it for hours even though I knew she'd only started when the timer hit 2. Her hair was done, lipstick applied. Her company face was on, even though it was just me. That was the first flicker. Nobody dresses up for the person who's always there. Kendra texted, she said, not looking up from the counter where she was smoothing pie dough like it had insulted her. I unzipped my jacket. Everything all right? She nodded once, sharp. She and Evan are coming by Wednesday, just to say hi before they head out. My hands paused at the collar. Head out where? Mara's fingers never stopped moving. Her pause was microscopic, half a second maybe, but I've spent 30 years wiring old houses. I know the difference between a steady current and a flicker that could burn something down. To meet Evan's family, she said, quiet. I blinked. Here? As in Rockford? She hesitated. Then, no. Madison. Madison. Not far, but far enough you pack a bag. Far enough you plan. Far enough that you're choosing a direction. And I'm going too, I asked, knowing the answer already but asking because that's what a man does when he still wants to believe in civility. Mara's hands slowed. then stopped. Her shoulders tightened, and she kept her eyes on the dough. It's just going to be me. Something slid cold down my spine. And it wasn't the weather. Why? She sighed. That kind of sigh people use when they want to make you feel like the difficult one. Like you're the one complicating gravity. Frank, it's complicated. That phrase. It's a blanket. People throw it over the truth, hoping you'll stop looking at the shape underneath. Kendra's bringing Darren, she said, voice low. I stared at her, like maybe the room would twist and reveal this wasn't real. Darren Miles. I asked, though I already knew. Mara finally met my eyes. Hers weren't guilty. Not quite. Just tired. Resigned. Like someone who'd already picked the easiest road, regardless of the cost. Kendra wants her dad there, she said. Evan's family is traditional. I almost laughed, but it came out crooked. Traditional, I repeated. So what does that make me? Bad manners? Frank. I held up a hand. I've been in this house 17 years, Mara. I've paid for half of everything in it. Fixed every leaky faucet and broken outlet. Replaced the porch light 5 times because Kendra kept knocking it with her bike. I drove her to school when your car wouldn't start. I signed the loan for her first reliable vehicle because Darren vanished again. So what is this? Some revisionist history tour? Mara's mouth pressed into a thin line. Don't make it about money. It's not about money, I said, heat rising in my throat. It's about showing up, being there. She turned back to the pie. It's one meeting, Frank. One meeting, I said, slow and even, like I was testing the shape of it. The meeting where families look each other in the eye and decide who belongs. She didn't answer. The oven fan kicked on. The old grandfather clock in the living room ticked. Loud, relentless, like time was keeping score. That night, I ate the chili she put in front of me. I rinsed my bowl. I wiped the counters. My hands moved like they always did. Steady, quiet, reliable. I marked my work hours in the small pocket calendar I carry, the one with the pen loop and the habit of surviving washer cycles. That's who I am. A man who does what he says, who shows up, who believes that life is a string of small responsibilities done right. But my chest, it felt tight. Not like pain, like pressure, like something pulling me inward until I disappeared. The betrayal showed up the next morning before my coffee finished brewing. A notification. Facebook. I don't live on it, but I keep it. For Kendra. For birthdays. For the times Mara wants to show the world we're happy. It was a photo. Kendra had posted it sometime after midnight. There she was. Hair curled. Makeup soft. Coat neat. Smiling like she'd won something. Mara stood beside her, hand on Kendra's arm. And on the other side, Darren Miles. Smiling too. That kind of father smile that photographs well when it's been absent for years. The caption read, Family night. So grateful to have Dad here for this. Dad. My thumb hovered over the screen. My ears rang. And for one terrible second, I was back on the deck of a Navy ship. 19 years old, freezing, staring at the horizon, learning how to keep your face still even when everything inside you is screaming. I wasn't 19 anymore. I was 56, and my own stepdaughter had just erased me with a caption. Mara walked into the kitchen a few minutes after the post had finished rewiring something behind my eyes. She wore her robe, hair a little tangled from sleep, face bare. That told me she wasn't expecting to explain anything. That told me the damage was already cataloged and filed under inevitable. She saw my phone in my hand, saw my expression, and the first words out of her mouth weren't sorry, or I should have told you, or let's talk. Oh, Frank, she said, like I'd stepped in something. I didn't move. I didn't speak right away. I just turned the screen toward her. The photo, the caption. Let the silence do what she wouldn't. She's excited, she said softly. I turned the phone back toward me, scrolled up. Read the caption again. Dad. 1 word. 3 letters. And 17 years vanished like steam from a coffee mug. She posted it, I said. Mara's shoulders lifted and fell. Practiced exhale. It's important to her. I looked at her. Really looked. And what about what's important to me? Her eyes flicked to the window, and in that one glance, I saw the truth. The silence wasn't hesitation. It wasn't guilt. It was agreement. She didn't think I belonged in that photo. She just didn't say it out loud. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in like a slap. Kendra stepped inside, cheeks pink, scarf loose, perfume trailing in with her like she expected applause. She saw us. Me frozen in the kitchen, Mara stiff at the counter, and gave us both a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning," she said. Bright, practiced, polite. "Mom." "Frank." Not Dad. Not even a warm Frank. A label. I held up my phone. "So, you met Evan's family?" Kendra's smile cracked for just a second. "Yeah. And you took Darren?" She gave a little shrug, brushing snow off her coat sleeve. "He's my dad." I felt something shift in my jaw. Something brittle. Kendra's eyes narrowed, her tone sharpening like she was already tired of the conversation. "Don't make this into a thing, okay? Evan's family is like that. They wanted a classy first impression." I blinked. "And I'm not classy?" She rolled her eyes. "Frank, you're not my father." The words weren't shouted. They weren't even said with malice. But they landed like a steel beam dropped from 3 stories. The kitchen was still warm. The pie smell still lingered from the night before. The coffee pot was still sputtering behind me. But I felt cold. All over. Mara said nothing. Not "hey now." Not "that's not fair." Just stood there. Still. I looked at Kendra. At this woman I had picked up from high school more times than I could count. The woman I had taught to drive. Had sat beside in hospital waiting rooms. Had signed for when banks wouldn't give her credit. I whispered, because my voice didn't trust itself any louder than that. "Okay," I said. "I got it." Kendra blinked, almost surprised I didn't argue. Maybe she thought I'd fight. Maybe she wanted me to. Mara looked down at the counter like it could save her. I walked past both of them down the hallway into the bedroom. Grabbed my jacket, my keys, my wallet. My hands were steady, but my stomach twisted like a live wire pulled too tight. Behind me, Kendra called out, "We're leaving tomorrow morning. Don't be weird about it." I didn't answer. In my trade, when a line is dead, you stop feeding it power. And something inside me had just gone cold. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Didn't text the foreman. Didn't check in on the storefront job waiting on East State. I packed a bag instead. Not a big one. Not dramatic. Just enough. Some clothes. Tools I didn't want them touching. My calendar. My shaving kit. The good flashlight. The charger for the drill that always disappears when someone else borrows it. I left a note. Simple. Plain. Taking some space. Frank. By noon, I was in a 1-bedroom apartment off Alpine. Month to month. Cold laminate floors. Thin walls. Radiator that made more noise than heat. But it was mine. No shared closets. No invisible lines drawn around conversations. Just me. And it turns out, when you vanish from a story, people don't always notice right away. 3 days passed. Then 4. Then the pounding started. Hard. Sharp. Angry. The kind of knocking that says, "You owe me something." I stood in the narrow kitchen, barefoot on the cold floor, watching the second hand on the wall clock sweep past the 12. Tick, tick, tick. I already knew who it was. I opened the door anyway. Mara pushed in first. Her coat half-zipped, eyes sharp like she'd practiced this speech in the car. Kendra followed, jaw clenched, phone in hand like evidence. "What is wrong with you?" Mara snapped before the door even closed behind her. I stepped back to give them room. The apartment smelled faintly of last night's coffee and the lemon cleaner the management used in the stairwell. It wasn't home, but it was clean. Ordered. My boots were lined up by the door, toes pointed out, muscle memory from years of not wanting to trip in the dark. Kendra crossed her arms. "You didn't answer my texts." "I got them," I said. "Then why didn't you respond?" Mara jumped in. "You've been acting strange, Frank. Cold. Distant." I looked at her. I said okay. That's not an answer, she said, snapping. That's nothing. You're acting like we did something wrong, Kendra said with a sharp laugh. Yeah, like we betrayed you or something. That word, betrayed. It hit like a short in the system, just enough juice to light everything up. My chest tightened, not from panic, from rage. A hot, quiet kind that had been charging for 17 years. I took a breath. What do you want? I asked. Mara threw her hands up. We want to understand why you're being like this. Like what? Like we erased you, Kendra sneered. I met her eyes. Steady. Flat. You did. Silence cracked across the room like a breaker flipping. Mara blinked. Frank. You went to meet his family, I said. Calm. Even. You took Darren. You told them he was your father. You told me not to come. Kendra scoffed. It was just one meeting. Those meetings matter, I said. That's when people decide who you are. You're making this bigger than it is, Mara said. Am I? Kendra stepped forward. Evan's family is image conscious. They asked about background, about stability. It was easier this way. Easier for who? I asked. Kendra hesitated. Just a beat. Enough for everyone, she said finally. There it was. Mara rubbed her temples. Frank, we needed this to go smoothly. I nodded slowly. You needed my name, not me. Neither of them denied it. I looked around the apartment. The bare walls, the ticking clock, the coat hook with one jacket hanging from it. I'd moved out less than a week ago. Temporary space, Mara had called it. Like 17 years could be packed into a shoebox and left in the garage. Kendra gestured at the room. See? This vibe. It wouldn't have fit. Something snapped then. Not loudly. Internally. Like a wire that's had too much pull. I've worked the same trade for 30 years. I said. I show up on time. I pay my bills. I fix what's broken. I raised you when your dad was gone. If that doesn't fit, I said, my voice low, that's not my problem. Mara's face hardened. You don't get to guilt trip her. I'm not, I said. I'm stating facts. Kendra rolled her eyes. Evan's parents didn't even ask about you. That landed like a steel rod to the ribs. They didn't ask, I repeated. No, because they were told you weren't really involved. I stared at her. Told by who? She didn't answer. Her eyes shifted. Mara's lips parted, then closed, and suddenly the room felt smaller. You told them, I said. Mara's voice dropped. I simplified. I laughed. Once. Sharp. You erased me. Mara's mouth opened again. I was protecting Kendra. From what? I asked. Neither of them had an answer. I didn't argue with Mara after that. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't throw anything. Didn't list the years like receipts slapped on a counter. I just stepped around her, opened the door, and held it. I'm done with this conversation, I said. She stared at me like I'd switched languages. You're just walking away? Yes. Kendra scoffed. Real mature. They brushed past me into the hallway, coats swinging, anger loud and careless. Cold air rushed in behind them, carrying the echo of their footsteps and the smell of someone else's life. The door slammed. I locked it. The silence afterward was loud. The clock ticked. The radiator clanked like it had an opinion. My breathing sounded too big for the room. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the door like it might explain itself. Then I grabbed my jacket and keys and went out. Rockford doesn't soften for anybody. Late November doesn't care what you're losing. The wind cut straight through my coat, the kind that goes for bone. Snow hadn't committed yet, just a slick of half-frozen slush under streetlights, gray and ugly and honest. I drove without thinking. Muscle memory. Habit. Ended up pulling into the VFW on East State without planning to. The sign buzzed faint and uneven. Inside, it was warm in that tired way, old heat, old smells. Beer. Coffee. Ghosts of cigarettes baked into the walls from decades ago when nobody apologized for being human. A few guys sat at tables, coats draped over chairs. Flags lined the walls, colors faded but still standing. Someone laughed low at the bar. Miller saw me and slid a mug across the table without asking. Black coffee. Strong enough. Outside the window, snow started falling for real. Light at first, then thicker, like the world finally decided. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it, then answered. Hello, Mr. Hollis? A woman's voice. Polite, careful. This is Linda Caldwell, Evan's mother. My grip tightened on the mug. Yes. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I looked around the room. The flags. The men. The quiet dignity of people who'd been disappointed before and survived it. No, I said. It's fine. She took a breath. I wanted to ask you something. We were told you were just a roommate, not really part of the family. The words slid under my ribs like ice. I didn't answer right away. The coffee urn hissed behind me. Someone cleared their throat. Normal sounds. Ordinary life. I've never been anyone's roommate, I said finally. I married Mara when Kendra was 9. I raised her. Silence. I see, she said. That's not how it was explained. I figured. She hesitated. Evan values honesty. So do we. I thought you should know. I appreciate the call, I said. When we hung up, I sat there until my coffee stopped shaking. I drove home slow, careful. The roads were slick and unforgiving, like consequences. Back at the apartment, I hung my jacket and lined up my boots. Didn't turn on the TV. I wanted quiet. I pulled my pocket calendar from my jacket. Sat at the table. Opened the drawer with the boring stuff. Tax papers, envelopes, receipts. Life flattened into paper. I wasn't looking for leverage. I was looking for truth. Car paperwork first. Kendra at 19. Used car lot in Loves Park. Her hands shaking. Darren nowhere to be found. Can you help? She'd asked. I signed. Hospital bill. She was 12. 6 hours in an ER under fluorescent lights that made everyone look dead. Paid. Graduation program. My handwriting on the back. Left bleachers. Don't forget camera. Then something newer. A credit union notice. Late payment. Almost dinged my credit. I remembered now. She said it was a mix-up. I fixed it. Quietly. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. If you label a wire wrong, I said to the empty room, somebody gets hurt. I pulled out a thin manila folder. Slid 3 things into it. Not everything. Just enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Mara. We need to talk. I didn't reply. Another notification. Email. Mr. Hollis, we're holding a small family meeting at our church this Sunday before final wedding plans. If you're willing, we'd like you there. Linda Caldwell. I read it twice. Closed the folder. Set it by the door. If I was going to be spoken about, I was done being spoken over. I read Linda Caldwell's email again Sunday morning, even though I'd already memorized it. The apartment was quiet. Not peaceful. Just quiet in that empty way you get used to when nobody expects you anywhere. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. A neighbor upstairs flushed something. Life went on, indifferent. I stood at the small kitchen table with a mug of coffee cooling in my hands. The folder sat on the edge, thin and neat. Half paperwork, half memory. Outside, Rockford looked washed out and tired. Snow crusted around the parking lot edges, gray with dirt. Like winter itself had decided it didn't care about appearances anymore. A family meeting. I'd spent most of the week telling myself I didn't care. That I'd already said my piece the moment I whispered okay in that kitchen and walked away. But I knew the truth. Knew it every time I woke up with a sore neck and tight shoulders. Like I'd been bracing for a punch in my sleep. I showered. Shaved. Put on the good jacket. The one without paint flecks on the sleeves. Respect, even if they didn't offer it first. I paused by the door, hand on the knob, one last time asking myself if I really needed to go. Then I picked up the folder and left. The church was a brick building tucked between a dentist's office and a row of bare trees. The kind of place where truth didn't raise its voice, but still expected you to listen. The parking lot was half full, minivans, sedans, vehicles that spoke of mortgages and morning routines. I sat in my truck for a full minute, hands resting on the steering wheel. My breath fogged the windshield. In the Navy, before inspections, you'd check your uniform one last time. Not because you were afraid of getting yelled at. Because order meant something. It said you still stood for something even if nobody noticed. I straightened my jacket, grabbed the folder, walked in. The fellowship hall hadn't changed. Coffee urns, folding chairs, lemon cleaner that couldn't quite erase the scent of old grievances. People were already there. Evan stood near the window with his parents, talking low. Nervous the way men get when they know something is coming and don't know which direction it'll land. Kendra sat a few chairs away, scrolling on her phone. Mara next to her, hands folded in her lap like a prayer that had already failed. And Darren, he was there too, sitting closer to the front than anyone else. Legs crossed, arm over the back of the chair like he owned it. He wore a blazer that didn't quite fit and a smile that said he thought he belonged. I took a seat near the aisle. Not the front, not the back, neutral ground. The folder rested on my knee, my hands on top of it. Mara saw me. Her eyes widened slightly. "You came," she whispered when she leaned over. "I said I would." She swallowed. "Frank, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. I won't speak unless I'm spoken to." That was the deal I made with myself. No speeches, no scenes, just the truth if anyone dared to ask for it. A few minutes later, Evan's parents stood near the front. Mr. Caldwell was tall, thinning gray hair, the careful tone of a man who'd spent years smoothing out conflicts over dinner tables. "We appreciate everyone coming," he said. "This is just a chance for families to be on the same page before moving forward." Same page. I shifted. The edge of the folder pressed into my knee like it wanted to be opened already. Mr. Caldwell looked around, smiling politely. Then his eyes landed on me. "And you are?" he asked. Before I could answer, Darren leaned forward. "That's Frank," he said quickly. "He and Mara were married. We're past tense." Mr. Caldwell nodded slowly. "I see." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Kendra kept staring at the floor. Evan looked at me like he wanted to ask something, but didn't know how. The meeting moved on. Dates, guest lists, venues, catering, seating charts. I listened the way I always had, with my mouth shut, like a man fixing drywall in someone else's house. Every time Darren spoke, something twisted. The way his voice filled the room like it belonged there. The way Mara didn't stop him when he said we like he hadn't spent years missing everything that mattered. My jaw ached. Then Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat. "There's one thing I'd like to clarify," he said, polite but firmer now. "Frank, may I ask you something?" I looked up. Yes. The room tilted. Not literally, just in the way people suddenly leaned toward what mattered. Mr. Caldwell folded his hands. Calm. Calculated. "How long?" he said carefully. "Have you been part of Kendra's life?" The question was gentle, but it carried weight. The coffee urn clicked off in the back. Somebody shifted in a chair. The smell of wet coats filled the silence. I thought about the first time Kendra called me Frank instead of that guy my mom's dating. Thought about teaching her to change a tire in a driveway with snow creeping into our boots. Thought about the time she came home drunk at 17 and I sat beside her on the bathroom floor until her hands stopped shaking. 17 years, I said. "I married Mara when Kendra was 9. Darren shifted. "Well, technically." I held up a hand. Didn't look at him. "I'm not here to argue technicalities," I said. "You asked how long I've been in her life. That's the answer." Mr. Caldwell nodded. "And during that time," I reached for the folder. Not dramatic. Not with a flourish. Just quiet. "This," I said, holding up the first sheet, "is the co-sign paperwork from when Kendra bought her first car. She was 19. Darren didn't pick up the phone. The dealership needed an adult signature. I was there." Darren looked away. "This is a medical bill from when she was 12. She had a procedure." Mara was crying over the cost. I wrote the check. Back in the folder. Next paper. "This," I said, unfolding it carefully, "is her high school graduation program." My handwriting on the back. "Left side bleachers. Don't forget camera." I looked at Kendra. Just a glance. Her face had gone pale. Her lips pressed tight. Her phone screen dark now. I didn't keep these to prove anything, I said. I kept them because they were my life. The silence got heavier. Evan's mother pressed her lips together. Evan stared at the floor, then looked up. Kendra, he said quietly, is that true? She didn't answer. Her fingers curled tighter around the phone. Darren leaned forward. This is getting blown out of proportion. I'm her father. Evan cut him off. Then why wasn't any of this mentioned? Darren's mouth opened, then closed. Mara spoke, soft, almost inaudible. I didn't think it mattered. We just wanted things to go smooth. Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose. Smooth isn't the same as honest. No one argued. Evan stood, ran a hand through his hair. That's not what I was told, he said, now facing Kendra. And it hurts more than you know. And there it was. The moment. Not explosive. Just final. The door opened and closed behind him. The room shrank. Darren sat frozen. Mara slumped in her chair. Kendra's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Maybe she didn't think they'd help. I closed the folder, set it on my knee again. I didn't come to ruin anything, I said quietly. I came because I was asked a question. No one contradicted me. The clock ticked overhead. The coffee urn hissed once, like it had something to say but didn't dare. And for the first time in a long while, the truth had nowhere left to hide.